So once again, thank you so much for joining today's webinar, Digital Leadership in a Time of Change. This webinar actually kickstarts a series of webinars that we're going to be having beginning in the summer and also continuing on to the year. And the aim of these webinars is really to kind of look at the different things the trends and changes that will be happening in the telecoms and technology space. So please look out for all of the webinars that we have. Please go to our website, bsonetwork.com, for any for updates on the webinars that we'll be having. As I kind of said before, we will be having, we want to ensure that everything is as interactive and as engaging as possible. So I just want to let you know that we do have a Q&A box, and we do also have a chat box that's at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions or you have any responses to anything, please feel free to put them there. Without further ado, we are extremely happy to have with us Steve Wilcox. Steve is the founder of IX Reach, and IX Reach was acquired by BSO last year, and he now serves as our Chief Product Officer. He's a very, very busy man, so we're very fortunate to have him. So Steve, thank you for being here, and welcome to the webinar.
Hey Ryan, thanks for the introduction, and thanks everybody for joining, and thanks to our staff who behind the scenes who helped to put all this together for everybody here today.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I really thank you to all the staff and everyone that's been a part. I think most people don't know that much about you, Steve, so can you just tell us, how did you get into the telecoms industry, and tell us a little bit about your journey?
I'll give you the quick version. I joined the telecoms industry in the late 90s, which was the dial-up era. My very first job was doing telephone tech support for people on modems. But that didn't last long, and I moved on developing web portal, managing the teams there, doing the development, automated provisioning back at that time. I set up an ISP, I founded another ISP, sat on various boards, internet exchanges like Manap and Links. I was on the board for 10 years. Was there around the time when the Internet Watch Foundation was created, sat on their funding council, got involved with modernizing Nanog in America, which was pretty much the big networking group in the world then. Spent some time in Google, network planning, infrastructure, architecture. Founded IX Reach and have been with the company through most of its life. And the company got acquired by BSO last year, and as you mentioned, I'm on the exec team here and officially also hold the title of being Chief Product Officer.
Well, thank you. I mean, so I guess the question that's on everyone's mind, I mean, we are, we're halfway through the COVID crisis. Everyone's been working from home the last couple of months, and a lot of companies are still getting to grips with managing teams and also enabling their staff to work remotely. I guess just as a startup question, what do you think companies should be doing now to help improve efficiency and productivity?
So I think it's worth remembering that we've had telephone conferencing for probably around 50 years. So it's not entirely new that people are working remotely and able to communicate with each other in these sort of means. But I think in the more recent years, you've had an explosion of new tools, which has sort of come along with the growth of the cloud. And all of these tools are about people who are not sitting together in office, so they're remote working, collaboration tools, tools like Zoom, like we're on now, and Slack and things like that. I think that different companies are adopting these kind of things to different degrees. We're probably quite far ahead on where we are because we haven't really changed any of the systems and tools that we had. We're just maybe using them more. So we're sitting here on Zoom, we're using Slack internally, we're using Google G Suite, we use Atlassian, Confluence, and all these things. These are not new tools to us, but we're maybe just relying on them more and being a bit more strict with our staff that, you need to use these. But I think different companies are probably in and out of this on a scale. Some companies prefer to use what we might call sort of more old-fashioned tools, and some of those may not lend themselves so well to this. And I think we've seen a scramble amongst pretty much all companies to kind of get themselves up to a level where they can actually have people properly working from home.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think probably one of the challenges, I mean, I think like everyone else, Zoom, Slack, all of these kind of interactive things, I've definitely had to learn or get accustomed to using. With everyone kind of working from home, the big, everyone's using their home broadband packages, and the constant complaint, the constant agony and kind of, anxiety over of bandwidth is something that keeps coming up. What do you think companies can do to kind of help their employees with these issues?
It's an interesting question. Well, let's start with the part about everybody's using them right now, and you're saying that sometimes they're slow. So from our point of view, from BSO IX Reach point of view, we've seen a massive increase of traffic. In the first sort of 2-3 weeks of the lockdown, we saw traffic up by as much as 50% in some parts of the backbone. And that's going to be a mixture of private point-to-point going between the world, cities in the world, remote peering services, on-ramp to the cloud. But we saw them all kind of pretty much jump up in the space of 2 or 3 weeks. And then while they've continued to increase since, they haven't sort of done it at the same pace. So clearly whatever happened at that point of time, there was a big shift in people's behavior and consumption of the services that they're having. We also saw an interesting thing with our customer orders. There was sort of like this initial lull when nobody was really sure what was happening and, how's it going to be? And then I think once companies realized that this was going to be a long-term situation, we kind of saw two different reactions coming into us. Of the people that had contacted us, probably 90–95% of them were probably looking at their next 6–12 month requirements and probably thinking, wow, we really need this stuff, we're relying on it, or just like we saw, we're seeing capacity go up. So we've pulled some of our upgrades that we've maybe had planned for 6 months. We've started to do them now to make sure that we're ahead of the curve. And I think our customers did that. So we had this surge of requests from existing customers saying, hey, I need to double or triple my capacity to keep ahead of it, which was kind of interesting. I said 95%. The other 5% did the opposite. The other 5% looked like they were trying to cut costs, get rid of what they can and come up with creative excuses and legal means to get out of contracts. But I don't have any analysis as to why that is. That seems a bit anomalous, but I suspect it was just purely they were trying to save money and presume their usage went up as well. I don't really know. To your point about your personal experience, though, of it, we know anecdotally and from what we've seen in the news that mobile companies and ISPs have had large amounts of traffic from people sitting at home, whether it's doing Zoom or whether it's Netflix. The people are sitting at home and doing a lot more of whatever it is that they're doing. And some of these networks have struggled a little bit. What can an employer do? This is kind of interesting. So there's two sides to this, I think. The first one is relating to the previous question about modernization. A lot of legacy IT systems, old-fashioned SME type of setup, where they're using sort of legacy IT, often have you using things like a VPN to get in, and often the VPNs are only provided to certain staff, senior staff, or something like this. I know some companies have had this issue, and they basically had to scale that up to let their users come in and be able to all connect to the corporate intranet. Of course, the other angle is not to use a corporate internet, but to secure your stuff on the cloud, per the previous question you asked me, which I think has been a far more efficient and productive thing to do. The other thought I have about people's internet is really about the service that they're taking as well. I think it might be making employers think a little bit about the quality of their employees' services from home. And, you know, I would note that, at least in the UK where we're sitting now, the cost of the sort of cheap, you get this broadband free with your TV and phone package isn't massively different from when you go out and you buy an entry-level or a mid-level business package. You know, we're talking 30, 40 pounds a month of difference in cost. I don't see really what the difference is when you're hiring somebody and when you're agreeing to work somewhere. If an employer says you need to have, you know, a business connection so that we can have you work from home, how is that different from saying you must commute into the office, you know, whether you're driving or by train? There's a cost involved. So I have two thoughts. One is that you tell employees you need to do this and it's up to you to figure it out. The other one is if you are creative with your office space and you're not permanently reserving floor space for people, that you could offer to subsidize the employees' broadbands. But I guess it depends on the employer. But either way, I think people need to take a look at what they have at home. That's the key.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with the idea of companies subsidizing home broadband, and generally kind of thinking about things differently. So I guess you know, with companies, you know, we've seen companies upgrade their capacity and their networks. How do you think that SDN and cloud will kind of incorporate into you know, improving their network infrastructure?
Yeah, so I think to answer it, you have to sort of look at how business was done a few years ago, and it was always done the sort of old-fashioned method where you would have a formal commercial negotiation. That might take a couple of months, waiting for somebody to approve something, getting that paperwork reviewed, signed back, submitting it into provisioning, where you then sort of go through this cycle. You get handed some bits of paper, you then have to go and order some cross connects and connect to it, and it all takes time. That could be a 3-month process. So you've got sort of a couple of months on the ordering, 3 months on the technical side, and that's not uncommon in the business world. The more modern way, using the technologies that you mentioned, specifically SDN and cloud, whenever we get orders from customers initially, we just encourage them to go straight to a high-speed connection. So whatever they're ordering with us, we'll try and give them a 10 gig NNI, or whatever they can take. You're still going to have that initial setup time. That's just inevitable of anything. But the thing is that once you've got the customer connected and they've got that usable NNI, you can do all kind of things with it. So in some of the packages that companies like ours offer, we sell things in bundles. We've got pre-agreed pricing and capacity. Some of the services the customers can order themselves on the portal, so it's a 2-minute thing to do and just go and do it. Or alternatively, they could still ask us to do it and it's still only a 2-minute thing. Worst case scenario is they need to place an order, but they can still do it quite quickly. And the thing is, because we've got that physical piece in place, there's none of this lead time that used to exist. So you can move pretty quick. And I think, you know, that's the big advantage of those sort of technologies. And I don't think people have necessarily appreciated it enough. But in times like this, when it's actually sort of physically difficult to go and install equipment or get things done, I know that our customers' experience, the ones that I've had my eyes on, have all been taking advantage where possible of this, using whatever's in place, using the NNIs and increasing. So I think it's kind of proven itself in that way. And the other thing that the advantage of using these kind of things, so just to give a different example, we're sitting here on Zoom, right? And we've used Zoom for years, so it's not new to us. But with the lockdown, we've seen it being on all the news. The government's using it; it's getting so much coverage, and they've had hundreds of millions of new sign-ups. So the question is, how did they manage to onboard hundreds of millions of users just sort of overnight? Did they send a small army of people out to some data center in I don't know where? And the answer is no. Zoom runs in Amazon AWS, so I'm pretty sure that what they did was they saw the incoming volumes and they just went to their Amazon control panel and turned on more computes and increased their bandwidth and just did it all with the sort of flick of a switch in line with their pre-existing thing. And it probably only took them a small amount of time. There was probably a bigger discussion in how many servers and how much are we going to pay for it than how long it actually took them to turn it up. But you can just imagine that they did that in minutes. And as far as I know, they haven't had any sort of service disruption despite this sort of enormous load coming onto the system. And I think that's one of the advantages with cloud-based services. And I can't name the specific customers that we have that are like that, but we have a number of big, well-known web or SaaS companies that use us. And they've came to us in this time and been like, hey, you know, these are the ones I was referring to before, where they just say, hey, can you double, can you triple, can you use that existing NNI? Can we add this location? And you know, the answer is yes. And so we've helped to support some of those businesses as well. So I know that this is true.
Oh, thank you so much. So just a reminder to everyone, we do have a Q&A box. So if you do have any questions, if you, you know, now is the time to just put them into that Q&A box. So Stephen, I think, you know, a lot of companies, you know, we've heard it before, everyone's talking about it, cloud, you know, everyone, you know, most companies would have known about it. I mean, some are hesitant to use it. Some are in the are using it currently. I know it seems quite normal now, but how can companies get, how can they use the cloud efficiently for them?
Right, so there's different aspects of the question. When we talk about the tools that they're using, we talked about this in one of the earlier questions, you know, using tools that are based in the cloud are inherently going to be easier for them because they don't need to maintain them. It doesn't matter where in the world you are, you're not sort of connecting over this VPN that's not very reliable for you, which is, you know, so using the tools, the Zooms, the Slacks and things, that's one element of something they can do. The other thing, let me give you an example, I think is probably an easier way. So we have an existing client, takes a lot of services from us. They're a big corporate. They've got this fantastic office in a nice swanky downtown Paris location. They have their on-site server room where all their important stuff is, and they have people managing it. It sounds great until the COVID lockdown came into place, and then suddenly their staff were prevented from getting to work. So they've got this infrastructure that's critical to them, but they can't get their staff in the office, and they can't get their IT staff there to maintain it either. So this was a big concern for them. What they've done is they were aware that we provide cloud compute services. So they've been speaking to us about what we can do to support them. And they're now in the middle of a project where they want to move as much of that physical infrastructure. I'm talking, you know, bare metal servers that they were hosting in their computer room. They want to get that stuff now into our cloud. So they want to migrate it, getting all the benefits of having somebody else manage that for you and having that flexibility of turning up and down that I mentioned with Zoom earlier. And of course, access to the capacity that they need. And they're no longer specifically dependent upon this physical thing in the office, which has been the problem for all of us. Physical movement, we can't do it now, even if we want to.
Yeah, thank you for that. I guess, yeah, I mean, a lot of companies are still doing it the old way, isn't it? It's about, so, you know, oftentimes we assume that everyone's on the cloud, but there's still a lot of companies that are a bit hesitant to kind of make that shift to the cloud. So I just want to take a quick look at the Q&A box, and we have a couple of questions. So let me just pick out one of them, and this is from Okay, so this is from a financial services company, and they say, and this is it, this is for you, Steve. It says, can my company have a hybrid cloud connectivity, as we do not want to put all our data on one platform, and we're worried that if it goes down? The person says, we are a financial institution with heavy data applications.
Okay, so the short answer is yes. The longer answer is I think we probably need to have a phone call to discuss the specifics to go through it. Remind me again, Ryan, what were the specifics of the question? That to use hybrid cloud, but they don't want to get off their existing infrastructure entirely?
Yeah, so so the question is, they want to know if they can use hybrid cloud connectivity because they don't want to put all their data on one platform. So
okay, well, I mean, there's a couple ways to do that. So firstly, the word hybrid just means that it's a mixture of private and public. So, you know, the difference between what your customers are able to get to versus what is only internal. So that by itself isn't about redundancy. That's about how you build the thing. In terms of getting redundancy, there's effectively two ways that you can do it. Well, no, there's more than two ways. Let me give you a couple. So if you've already got your physical infrastructure, what we see, so one of our, can't name drop, one of our clients, which is a very well-known website for booking hotels and things like, they have physical infrastructure in two locations in the world, but I don't know what they do with that infrastructure. It must be where the money or something is, but they host everything in the cloud, and they have all these private connections around the world to manage the cloud, and the front end of the cloud is then somehow speaking, I'm assuming, through some sort of encrypted or firewall thing into their physical hosting. So that's one way in which you can kind of mix and match. I suspect at their huge scale that works for them, because what a lot of companies that are smaller will do is they'll put the redundancy within the cloud itself. And there's two ways to do it. So if you look at any major cloud provider like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, they have these different regions. And what a region means is it's like, you know, if you talk about London region, they've got some data center in Slough, which is a few miles from where I am now, and that's what they call UK London or U East or something, whatever the name is. And then they have another region, which is like US East, which will be a couple data centers out there in Ashburn, sort of near Washington in America. You can put the same things in two locations, and those are physically separate servers. There's no, you know, because they're in these different regions, you've got complete physical separation from where the data is, in addition to all the services that the cloud provides anyway, because you don't normally have any issue with loss of service or loss of data within a cloud provider, because by nature of the virtual machine setup that they have, they already duplicate the data and make sure that if a server fails, that the thing kicks back in. But if you need it, you can put things into more than one region, and then you'll get redundancy because it'll be physically separated. If you want to go a step further, you can use more than one cloud provider as well. Some people do this currently because of the difference of features and pricing between them. So they might put one type of databases in one thing, but their web servers are in another thing. So, you know, but there's nothing to stop you from putting the exact same thing, one thing in Amazon and one thing in Google, and as a way of having that sort of redundancy. But as I said at the start, I mean, you really need to get into the specifics with the client to give a tailored answer, but those are sort of the options that you have with something like that.
We have another question, and this person says, we are a technology company and would like to know how safe and secure the digital infrastructure needs to be, and what is the best option to ensure security?
How safe and secure the digital infrastructure needs to be. It kind of depends how deep you want to get down the rabbit hole on it, I guess, is the answer. So there's a lot of ways that you can put security onto things. We're using encrypted tools right now. For example, I mentioned that we use like Google, for example, G Suite for documents and email. The connections we have with our computer in the web browsers are encrypted anyway. So, they should be SSL level secure, which is as good as it really needs to be. There's other ways, like making sure that your computer itself has physically got encryption on it. And when you put stuff in the cloud, you have the same options as well. You can choose what's encrypted, and you can choose to make sure that communication is, sensitive communication is done over private, not public, and that communication in itself is end-to-end encrypted, which is always sort of important to do end-to-end encryption, because then you're not relying upon anything in the middle that can sort of be hacked. I don't have a lot of specifics to be able to answer the question to detail, but just anecdotally, there's a lot of people working in security, and a lot of these systems and tools that have been implemented have a lot of thought given to security, because they're serving governments, banks, people handling money, and they have to meet the regulations of the individual countries in order to be able to use them for something like banking, for example. Hence, these companies that make these tools have a lot of smart people working for them who've got security experience. Anecdotally, you're usually more likely to get hacked because of something that your IT guys didn't do than by using a third-party tool. It takes a lot of effort to build in security when you're developing, or when you're building servers, or building, websites and things. It's a lot of, it's a complicated and skilled job to make sure you get it right. And then even once you've got it, you've got to keep on top of all the different little things that are coming out, the vulnerabilities and the issues. And I'm not saying it's not possible to secure something that you do yourself, but I'm just saying that with the amount of experience now that has gone into the people that work in the cloud companies and the SaaS providers, they have more ability and knowledge to make sure that things are secure than people who are trying to do it from a 6-man team based in the office. So it's worth trusting them with what they say their capabilities are, and have that in your mind.
Okay, so we just have time for one more question. So we have another one. It says, do you think with increasing AI, there will be significant changes in digital technology?
Okay. This is where it would be helpful to have a to and fro with the question asker. It kind of depends what you mean, because AI can mean anything to anybody depending upon what your understanding of it is, whether it's those annoying little bots that get on those web pages where they never answer the question that you actually ask him, or whether you're sort of talking about a Terminator 2 situation with robots running around, or Space Odyssey, or anything like that. So Ryan, can you just, the question was, will AI,
I guess the question is asking, so the person asked, with the increasing use of AI, I think the person wants to know, how is that going to impact the technologies that we use currently? Is AI going to be something that we start seeing in more kind of platforms? Is that something that's even going to affect, platforms like Zoom and so on?
So this is just my opinion. I can't say that I have a crystal ball in front of me to predict too much. I mean, there's already, I think companies are introducing sort of lightweight elements of AI already, that maybe things that you wouldn't think of AI, but where where you either interact with the system and it decides on what you want, or where the system has some sort of advanced self-healing, or it's determining what you need, or increasing capacity, or fixing an issue, or something like this. I think there's quite a lot of that stuff already out there, but you might not class it as AI because it doesn't sort of talk to you. But it essentially is where the big AI debates are going. So when you see big name people talking about, AI is great or AI is terrible, typically what they're thinking about is an arms race where they've got laser cannons flying at high altitude on automated things, and there's a swarm of these, and they have to decide for themselves whether to start a war, because when the opposing territory sends their birds to come and attack, then they don't have time to take a human, so the robots have to be in charge of deciding whether to start the war, and that's this kind of you want to say sci-fi, but it's not really that far-fetched, is it, at the minute? So between those sort of two extremes of something just repairing your hard drive versus something starting a war, I think the answer is yes. I think AI is coming into play. I just think that maybe the ways in which it's been used is a bit more subtle, and it's actually pretty advanced. I talked before about being able to spin up computers for Zoom. I talked in another answer about how these cloud virtual machines, they self-heal. If a server goes down and another server comes online, and it knows to bring that data over. And, you have all these things. I mean, I think this is essentially AI. I mean, it's it doesn't involve the human going and doing the things, but you've kind of already pre-told it what to do. But at the same time, I think it's that, and they are developing sort of more and more advanced levels of this, where the systems can do their own diagnostics and then decide what to do. And I think this is a lot more relative and at the level that we need it to be for the kind of things that we're doing. At least I'm not involved in any flying robot projects, but
not yet.
With the cloud.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for your time. I think we've actually run out of time. I mean, it's really been enjoyable. Thank you so much, Stephen. I've learned so much. So we just want to thank everyone for participating in our webinar. We will be, as a kind of complimentary offer, we will be providing a free consultation to everyone that's been on the webinar. So if you want to take up that offer, we will look at your technology system, we'll look at your network, and we will provide you with a free consultation looking at everything. And I'm proposing changes to that. And if you want to kind of take up that offer, please, the email is on the screen, the email is hello@bsonetwork.com. If you just want further information, please feel free to go to our website, bsonetwork.com. And yeah, if you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us. Thank you so much again. Thank you, Stephen. And I hope you all enjoyed today's webinar. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.